Listen closely. I'm not here to just hand you another productivity hack today. I'm going to give you a battle-tested survival guide. Imagine losing absolutely everything you've ever worked for. Your money, your home, your reputation, and having to rebuild it all from absolute scratch. How do you do that? You don't do it with some magic bullet or a lucky break. You do it by developing one specific daily practice. You do it by becoming an idea machine. You see, I learned this from James Altucher. The guy literally lost $15 million in cash, went completely to zero. And while he was literally crying on the floor, he had this profound realization. The only way to survive, the only way to kick back into action was to start building his idea muscle. When the gun is to your head, you either figure it out or you die. He learned the hard way that financial wealth is just a side effect of a really strong idea muscle. So here's the training manual for today's explainer. We're going to cover the atrophied idea muscle, the 10 idea workout, how to embrace the bad ideas, idea sex and prompts, and finally, the 2-column method.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the atrophied idea muscle.
It takes exactly 10 to 14 days. Think about it just like a physical muscle in your leg. The brain's idea muscle actually atrophies rapidly after just 10 to 14 days of non-use. If you lie in bed for 2 weeks, you're going to need physical therapy just to walk again, right? Well, the exact same thing happens with your mind. And once that idea muscle atrophies, it can take up to 6 months of dedicated, intense practice to fully recover and change your life around. When you don't use this muscle, your brain just atrophies. You get stuck, you go broke, perfectionism completely takes over, and the world, which is already moving at 1,000 miles per hour, simply leaves you in the dust. But when you actively exercise it, you become an idea machine. You become practically superhero resilient. Because the ultimate takeaway here is that money isn't the true currency of life. Ideas are. Good ideas buy you better experiences, they buy you more time, and ultimately, they save your life.
Which brings us to section 2, the 10 idea workout. Look, you absolutely don't need some fancy software subscription or a $50 leather-bound notebook for this. The ultimate workout tool? It's just a cheap waiter's pad. Why? Because it fits right in your pocket. Because it's designed specifically for making lists, not for writing sprawling novels or long paragraphs. And honestly, because it's cheap, it totally removes the pressure of needing to write something profound. It's just a list, no big deal.
So here are the steps for your daily reps. Step 1, read an inspirational or nonfiction book for about 10 to 20 minutes, just to prime the pump. Step 2, write exactly 10 ideas daily. Now this is where it gets super interesting. Step 3 is the most vital part. Coming up with those first 4 or 5 ideas, usually pretty easy, but pushing to idea number 6, that's where it gets really hard. That is where your brain physically starts to sweat. Just like in the gym, the muscle doesn't actually build until you break a sweat. You have to push through that cognitive friction to get all the way to 10.
If you do this every single day, and I mean no weekends off, what do you get? You get 3,650 ideas a year. Now, let's be brutally honest here. Most of these are going to be terrible. If your ratio of bad to good ideas is 1,000 to 1, that's completely fine. The sheer volume is what guarantees success. Practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but it makes permanent. You are building this unstoppable fountain of ideas so that when a crisis does hit, you are completely ready. Moving on to section 3, embrace the bad ideas.
Because this is the inevitable question, right? What if I sit down, I'm staring at my waiter's pad, and I just can't come up with 10 ideas? What do you do when perfectionism completely freezes you in your tracks?
Well, my advice to you is going to sound completely counterintuitive, but it works flawlessly. If you can't come up with 10 ideas, then force yourself to come up with 20 bad ideas. Seriously. Perfectionism is really just your brain trying to protect you from harm and embarrassment. You have to short-circuit that protective filter. You literally shut the brain off by intentionally forcing it to generate absolute garbage.
Let me give you a concrete example straight from the source material to prove how well this works. Let's say you're completely stuck on writing book ideas. So you write down a terrible one. Dorothy on Wall Street. Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz lands in a hurricane. She gets dropped at the corner of Broadway and Wall Street, and she has to find the CEO of Goldman Sachs to get home. But instead, he offers her a job as a high-frequency trader. I mean, it's a horrible, ridiculous idea. But the moment you write it down, the pressure is totally off. The filter is broken, and you can easily just move on to the next 15 ideas.
All right, that brings us to section 4, idea sex and prompts. This introduces a concept called idea sex. Sounds crazy, but it's basically the process of synthesizing 2 seemingly unrelated domains to formulate a highly specialized, completely non-obvious value proposition. Think about how Hollywood pitches work. No one goes in and just says, hey, I have a new movie idea. They say, it's James Bond meets the Titanic. When you mate 2 totally distinct concepts together, your imagination just begins to dance. The generations of fresh ideas evolve incredibly fast this way.
So what exactly should you write your 10 ideas about every day? Let's rapid fire through 10 specific creative prompts that you can literally use tomorrow morning. Number 1, idea sex combinations. Just mash 2 random things together. 2, 10 old ideas made totally new. 3, 10 ridiculous things to invent. 4, 10 books you could write. 5, 10 business ideas for giants like Google or Amazon. 6, 10 industries where you could just remove the middleman. 7, 10 ways to save time today. 8, 10 things you learned yesterday. 9, 10 things you can do differently in your own daily routine. And 10, take one single problem you have right now and write 10 solutions for it, like how to beat the IRS. This list proves you will never, ever run out of things to write about.
And finally, section 5, the 2-column method.
The absolute crucial point you need to remember here is that execution is king. An idea is totally worthless unless it actually gets tested in the market. An idea is just an event, right? But execution, that is the process. You can have the absolute best idea in the world, but if you're just sitting on a stool in a field hoping a cow's going to back up to you, well, you're not going to get any milk.
To bridge that gap, we use the two-column method. It's so simple. Just draw a line right down the middle of your page. Your idea goes on the left side, and the very first physical step goes on the right. Take Richard Branson, for example. When he had this wild, massive idea to start a new airline, did he sit down and map out a 10-year business plan? No way. His first step? Call Boeing to see if he could lease an airplane. Want to be a brain surgeon? First step? Buy a book on brain surgery. Want to build 10 websites but you have no idea how to code? First step? Post a job finding a programmer. You really only need the headlights to show the next 30 feet to drive all the way home in the pitch dark.
And you know, as you get better at this, you can expand that into what's called the idea tuple. When you really want to test if an idea is viable, you structure it with 4 precise components. First, the core idea. Second, the technical specs of the whole idea. Third, the immediate next step to execute. And fourth, a strict timeline to actually get it done. This framework totally forces your brain out of the clouds and grounds it into actionable reality.
These tools are incredibly simple, but the neurological conditioning they create is profound. So I'm going to leave you with this final question to wrap up our explainer today. I want you to look at your life, go grab a cheap pad of paper, and tell me, what 10 ideas will save your life today? Go get to work.